I believe it was the summer of 1976, or perhaps 1977, I'm not exactly certain. I'd recently gone to work for a small newspaper in Hale, Michigan, the Tri-County Photo News Journal. Its name was longer than its actual run. The newspaper office occupied an old red brick building from the late 19th century. Much of the original interior was still there, and my editor and employer, Don Osborne, had his work cut out for him, turning the old bank into a functioning newspaper office. At the time, I was still living at home with my parents in Oscoda. Hale was a good distance away, and in those days there was no cell phone. The world seemed like a much larger place. If I was going to be late getting home, I always tried to let my parents know. My mother was a bit of a worrier, and I never liked the thought of her wondering if I was laying dead by the road, and yes, she would wonder that. One night we worked especially late. By the time we finally called it quits, it was nearly 12:30. The phones had not yet been connected in the office, and I knew I would not be home until sometime after 2 in the morning. That thought lingered in the back of my mind as I walked down the front steps of the old bank building. The night. The night was warm and humid the way I love it. Moonlight fell across the quiet streets of Hale, and waiting for me at the curb was my favorite car of all the vehicles I have ever owned, a dark green Mercury Comet SS with black stripes down the side and a scoop on the hood. I climbed in and started the engine and pulled away into the summer night. Before long, the lights of Hale were behind me. The windows were rolled all the way down, and the warm breeze from the wind tousled my hair about. The air was heavy with humidity and carried the scent of pine from the forest that lined the road. There were very few cars out at that hour, and once I left town, it often felt as though I had the entire road to myself, rarely passed anybody. And above me, the sky. Oh man, the sky. The moon was not quite full, and there was not a cloud to be seen. But away from the lights, the stars seemed endless. You could almost see the cloud of the Milky Way. And every now and then, patches of humidity haze drifted through low areas, softening the view for a moment before disappearing again into the darkness. My cassette stereo was playing. I had installed it myself, and I was rather proud of it. Then a familiar song came on, 10cc, I'm Not in Love. And even today, it remains one of my favorite songs. Driving alone through the pine forest in the middle of the night, there was something almost haunting about parts of that song. Not frightening, just lonely and beautiful. I turned it up and let it fill the car as the miles slipped away beneath the tires. At places along the road, I could hear frogs and crickets through the open windows. I still love those sounds. Even now, they make me feel far away from the world, far away from noise, far away from worry. Then, as I passed Argo Springs, another memory surfaced. Years earlier, while skipping school, I had come there with a bottle of Mogan David Mad Dog wine, and I decided I was going to try to do some drinking. The experiment didn't last long. My father somehow managed to find me there in the middle of nowhere. Don't know what he was doing out there. Might have been looking for me. He never made a scene, never embarrassed me. He simply made sure I got home safely, as that was the kind of man he was. The road carried me onward. Eventually, I reached a tiny village of Footsite. At that hour, it was little more than a few dark buildings and a single streetlight glowing against the night. There were no cars, no people, just silence. Then it was back onto River Road and east toward Oscoda. I always felt a little relief when I reached town. I loved the night, but there was also something about those lonely roads that reminded me how small a person could feel beneath the stars. Finally, I turned into my parents' driveway. The porch light on the side entrance was still on, and the screen door stood open. Back then, we didn't lock everything up the way people have to do now. As I stepped inside, I heard a bedroom door quietly close. Someone had waited up for me. On the kitchen table, and I suspected it was my mother. On the kitchen table sat a half a cup of tea. The tea had grown cool by then, but it told me everything I needed to know. She had been waiting, watching the clock, listening for the sound of my car. The kitchen was simple and quite ordinary. White appliances, wooden cabinets, nothing remarkable. Yet at that moment it felt like the safest place in the whole world. I often think about that drive, that old newspaper office, on the comet, the stars, the pine forest, and that song on the radio. But more than anything, I remember the porch light. I remember the cup of tea. And I remember feeling that someone was waiting for me to come home. And nearly 50 years have passed since that summer night. Yet all of the things I remember from that drive, the strongest memory remains the simplest. I was home, and it was the safest place I have ever known.